Hi, everybody. Who wants to go to a drinks party? Okay, so you got to get through me. I'm pretty quick, and then Clay's going to give a great keynote speaker presentation and take us home out to drinks. So as Sunil said, I'm working with Blissfully. I run business development for Blissfully. For those of you who were here last year, you may have heard our CEO, Ariel Diaz, speak. And here at Blissfully, what we do is we provide a SaaS management platform. We help companies discover and then manage their SaaS applications. What that does for us is it gives us access to a large amount of data, real-world data about how people are using those SaaS applications. We've heard about a lot of market research, and there is a lot out there, but it tends to be data that people remember and put down on paper or onto a web form and then submit. We actually have data that we anonymize about how organizations of all different sizes are using SaaS applications, what they're spending on those SaaS applications, that we then make useful to them to give them insights into their own application, into their own organizations and what they're doing with those SaaS applications. I think it's very interesting for us as organizations who are building and selling SaaS applications to understand some of this information, because it gives us very valuable insights into some of the challenges that our customers are seeing today. So, the first slide, are we on? When I push the button? Great, okay. So no surprise to anybody, we're still in the midst of a SaaS explosion. The curve continues to grow up to the right. And what we have here is we have data across the companies that we work with. The average company that we work with spends about $343,000 a year on SaaS applications. That's quite a large amount, and you can see here, and it's distributed well across the organizations themselves. It's not just concentrated in one silo. The average number of applications that employees are using ranges from about 7.5 applications down at the low end to over almost 10 applications when you start to get into mid-market companies of 500 and plus employees. The number of applications tends to grow as specialization starts to come into the equation, but it also exposes, and we were able to see this, redundancies in some of those applications. All of us have been in situations where everybody gets to choose their own project management application, for instance, and those overlaps start to come into play. The other thing that we see as we look at this data and the data usage from our customers is a really large growth in the number of free applications out there. Universally, across different sizes of companies, we're seeing a ratio of 3-to-1 of free applications to paid subscriptions, which has a tremendous number of ramifications around for organizations that are interested in control and compliance and security and just management, okay? So the next thing that we see when we look at this data, that was aggregate data that I shared with you, but on a per company basis, what we can do at Blissfully is we can start to drill into and understand the relationships between users and the applications themselves. We call this graph here, which we've only just realized is important, the SaaS graph itself. This SaaS graph is a snapshot of the various relationships between users and the applications that they use. Here's why this is important. So the average 500-person organization uses about 123 SaaS applications. That's not a very big task when it comes to application overhead management. You know, that's pretty manageable. But those 123 applications actually represent over 2,700 different relationships, okay? 127 different relationships, which means that those are all relationships that have ramifications for these companies when it comes to security, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to access, when it comes to privacy and spending, okay? This is the kind of thing that needs to be tracked and managed for our customers. So that's sort of the snapshot that we have of the market itself, and then the explosion at a macro view, and then the complexity on a per company basis. Now what I'm going to do is very quickly run you through 4 snapshots. And these are snapshots that we have. What we did was we took all of our data and then collected it by size of company, under 50 employees, 50 to 100, et cetera. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, as I show you this data, is I'm going to ask you to focus on a couple things. The first is, look at the spending numbers. What we do is we average the spending per organization and then the spending per employee on an annual basis. And the other thing that I'll ask you to keep an eye on as the companies grow in size is the number of billing responsibility or billing owners within those organizations. We're no longer in a world where central applications are centrally sourced, acquired, and managed by IT organizations. We've all got the power in this room to go out and buy for our own teams or our own companies SaaS applications. That's great. That's democracy at its best. But it means that it's an absolute management nightmare. We don't understand if we're spending the right amount of money, we're buying the right applications. We don't understand how quickly or how to efficiently manage and onboard people. So you'll see that these complexities increase as we increase in the size of company. So here's a snapshot of our customers, under 50 employees, fairly manageable, $21,000 being spent on SaaS applications every year. That roughly is about $1,300 or $1,400 per employee. Pretty manageable. What we tend to find is that in companies under about 25 employees, spending on SaaS applications is not necessarily an issue. We tend to give people the freedom to choose what they want. You'll see here that we have, in these sizes of companies, typically 4 different unique owners of those applications, possibly the VPs, okay? One thing you'll see in the middle of these slides is that we're also able to track the turnover in the SaaS stacks that these companies have. We're able to track over time, and this is a snapshot of over a 2-year period, how many new applications are added and how many applications are dropped. So we take a different view of churn, not just on a per application basis, but on a per stack basis, okay? Now let's go up to a larger company. Very interesting. We've actually leapt when it comes to average spending in SaaS applications, okay? We're also leaping in terms of spend per employee. But remember, in that previous snapshot, we had 4 billing owners. Now it's 12 billing owners. So the difficulty of gathering information about subscriptions and when licenses need renewals, et cetera, gets much harder, okay? The picture gets much more interesting as you go larger. Now we're in situations where you've got almost 20, we've only doubled the size of the company, but now we've got almost 20 people in the organization who have billing responsibility for these SaaS applications, okay? And then as we get larger, you see that this is where we start to identify some really interesting inefficiencies. You know, we're able to go into these companies, and because of on a per company basis, we present back to them information about the applications that they're using and help them understand on a per team and per employee basis what the spend is and how inefficiencies come into the equation. Things that we're also able to identify are orphan subscriptions, okay? John may have brought into the organization an application, but has since left. That's great, but there's going to be ramifications when it comes to renewal time. So as vendors, we need to be really on top of that. One of the previous presenters was saying, I think it was from ChargeBee, was saying, here's your source of revenue, is make sure you rebill your existing customers. Well, if they're moving out, we've got to keep really good track of that. There's also, as you go up the stack in terms of size of companies, there's also larger instances of duplicate subscriptions. That is the same application being acquired by a company multiple times, which I think is quite interesting. So in a very quick snapshot overview, that's what we do. We help those customers manage their SaaS environments. We've been doing this for several years. We've got eight plus years of application data. And we're also building out partnerships with other companies whose applications integrate into Blissfully, as well as people who take us to market. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll leave it up to Clayton to do an amazing close.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.